The sky turned red before anyone heard the first sound of the ships. They came without warning, cutting through clouds like blades. No message, no signal. Just fire raining down on the villages below. Earth's defenses reacted too late. By the time satellites tracked the origin, 5 major cities were already smoking ruins. Lena stood in the middle of a field, staring up at the burning sky. She was not human. Her skin was deep blue, her long silver hair braided with copper beads. She was one of the Eldari, an alien species that once lived far beyond the solar rim. Now she was here, on Earth, because her home had already been destroyed by the same enemy. The humans called them the Dracs. No one knew where the Dracs came from. Their ships were dark, silent, and moved like shadows. They didn't speak. They didn't listen, they just took. First the Eldari homeworld, then 2 other colonies, and now Earth. Every Eldari knew this war could not be won alone. Captain Elias Ward had never met an Eldari before the war. He was a ground unit leader in the Terran forces. His squad had been assigned to defend the refugee camps where the remaining Eldari were kept. When the attack spread, the camps became battlegrounds. That's where he saw her Lena carrying 2 wounded children across a river of burning trees. She didn't speak his language, but she didn't need to. Her eyes told him everything. Fear, strength, a need for something more than survival. She looked at him as if she had already lost everything, but was still willing to fight for what little remained. Ward wasn't sure why, but he trusted her. Instantly, they ran together through ruined valleys and shattered cities. Lena guided him through terrain no human had ever studied. She had knowledge of the land, even though it was not hers. She could feel something in the soil, sense hidden tunnels and ancient ruins buried beneath ash. The Eldari had secrets, and Ward began to see they were not just refugees. They were survivors of something much older and far more terrible. It wasn't just war, it was extermination. The Dracs were following patterns, striking places connected to old signals messages the Eldari once sent across the stars. Someone had told the Dracs where to look. That was the truth Lena shared when she finally trusted Ward enough to speak. Her voice was soft, musical, but her words shook him like thunder. "They come to erase memory," she said. "They come to burn history." Ward didn't understand at first, but then she showed him a map not on paper or screen, but drawn in the dirt with her finger. Lines, circles, and stars. She wasn't just tracing paths, she was drawing stories. She was remembering. Places the Dracs hadn't found yet. Places that still held hope. He grabbed a stick and knelt beside her. Slowly, he added to her map. Earth locations, human bunkers, satellite routes. Together they made something new. A path that connected the surviving Eldari with the remaining human forces. It wasn't a battle plan. It was an escape, a journey. Maybe even a last chance. The map became their bond. It grew with every mile they traveled. More Eldari joined. More humans followed. The war had started with fire, but now it moved through whispers, hidden paths, and secret meetings under moonlight. It was no longer about winning with weapons. It was about leading the right people to the right place. Some humans still didn't trust the Eldari. Some Eldari didn't want to follow a human. But the map in the dirt changed their minds. They saw it as more than directions. It was proof that unity could be stronger than fear. That hope could outlive even the loudest explosions. Ward had never believed in fate, but watching Lena draw her lines, he began to think maybe fate believed in him. One night, deep in the scorched ruins of an old mountain village, Lena looked up at the stars. She said something in her own language. Ward didn't understand it fully, but he caught one word repeated, sanctum. She said it with reverence, like it was sacred. Later, he would learn what it meant. A place not just safe, but untouched. A place the Dracs feared. A place only the Eldari remembered. And so, with nothing left to lose, they followed the map, Asterisk, the wind howled through the ruins as they moved deeper into the wastelands. Dust clung to their skin, and silence stretched across the dead cities. Ward walked ahead, his eyes scanning the shattered buildings. Behind him, Lena led the Eldari children, their eyes wide but silent. They had seen too much to cry anymore. Each step took them away from the known world. Maps and satellites were useless now. The terrain had changed after the bombings. Rivers had vanished. Hills had collapsed. Old roads led to craters. But Lena remembered something the humans didn't. She felt the earth in her bones. Her people once lived among stars, but they always remembered the ground beneath their feet. They found shelter in an old stone temple, half buried under rock and ash. No one had used it in years. Ward lit a small fire with dry roots while Lena traced another symbol into the dust. A spiral, a line, and 3 dots. He didn't ask what it meant. He only memorized it. At night, the children gathered around Lena. She sang softly, words in her own tongue. The melody echoed off the stone walls. Ward didn't understand the lyrics, but he knew the feeling. It was not just a lullaby. It was history passed through sound. The children listened not as kids, but as keepers of a fading legacy. Ward stayed, awake while the others slept. He cleaned his rifle and watched the stars. His hand rested on the crude map they had drawn the day before. He kept it folded in his jacket, not because he needed it, but because it reminded him of why he was still alive. The next morning, a group of human soldiers arrived at the temple. They were dirty, tired, and suspicious. One of them aimed his weapon at Lena the moment he saw her. Ward stepped in front of her without thinking. The soldier's name was Miller, and he didn't trust aliens. "You protecting her now?" Miller asked. "I'm protecting Hope," Ward replied. There was tension in the air, guns, anger, old wounds. But then one of the Eldari children handed Miller a piece of cloth with the same spiral Lena had drawn. He looked at it, confused. Then something changed in his eyes. He lowered his weapon and nodded slowly. "We saw this carved in stone back east," he said. Didn't know what it meant. That moment broke the wall between them. For the first time, humans and Eldari stood in the same space without fear. Lena smiled, and Ward knew something important had shifted. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about rebuilding something lost. They added Miller's team to the map. They knew paths from the eastern forests, old radio towers still working, hidden caves where supplies were buried. Each human and Eldari brought a piece of knowledge. Ward and Lena combined them like puzzle pieces. The map became more than lines. It became a story of survival written by many hands. Along the journey, they discovered a hidden network of ruins marked with the spiral symbol. Eldari temples, old waypoints, places untouched by the Drax. Some held supplies. Others held scrolls and carved stones with more maps. Lena wept when she saw them. Not from sorrow, but because her people had left these behind long ago, hoping one day they would be needed. Ward didn't cry, but he did kneel beside her and say, "We'll use every mark they gave us." Their group grew. 10 became 20, then 50. Eldari and humans walked side by side. Some laughed. Some shared stories. Some still kept to themselves. But all of them followed the same path. The dirt map turned into a movement. In one village, they found a dying elder. An elderly woman so old her skin was almost silver. She held Lena's face and whispered, "You remembered the song." Then she pointed to the hills and said, "Sanctum is real. It waits beyond the stone teeth." No one knew what the stone teeth were until the group reached a valley filled with jagged rocks that looked like broken fangs. Lena stopped there. She drew another spiral in the dirt and placed a hand over it. Ward watched her closely. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes closed. She whispered something too soft to hear. Then she looked at him and nodded. "We go through Not around. She. Sud. The path was dangerous. Steep cliffs, loose gravel. Strange echoes, but they moved carefully, helping each other. Even Miller carried an Eldari child across a narrow ledge. Trust had started as a risk. Now it was a bond stronger than metal. At the edge of the valley, they found a carved stone gate covered in vines. The spiral symbol was etched into its center. Lena knelt and brushed the dust away. She looked back at Ward, her voice steady. "This is the door," she said. "But it opens only to truth." They didn't know what that meant. But Ward placed the dirt map on the stone and waited. Nothing happened. Then Lena placed her hand over his and whispered, "Together." The stone shimmered faintly. A crack appeared. The gate began to move, and the path forward was revealed. The gate opened with a low hum that vibrated through the ground. Cold wind rushed out from the dark tunnel beyond. It smelled of ancient stone and untouched air. Lena stepped forward first, her fingers brushing the carved spiral on the wall. The others waited, watching in silence. Ward gave a short nod, and they followed her inside. The passage was narrow, forcing them to walk single file. The walls were covered in glowing symbols that pulsed faintly with blue light. Lena raised her hand and touched one. The light responded, brightening as if greeting her. She whispered a word in her language. Ward didn't know the meaning, but the warmth in her voice said it was something sacred. Far below the surface, they found a chamber. Wide and round, with a ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood a tall stone spire surrounded by smooth tiles arranged like the points of a star. Lena walked to the center and sat down. She closed her eyes. Slowly, her voice rose into a low chant. The tiles around her lit up one by one. Everyone stood still. Even the children made no sound. Ward moved beside her, but didn't speak. He just watched as light traced old patterns into the floor. A map appeared again, larger and clearer than before. This one didn't lead to Sanctum. It was Sanctum. Symbols marked every wall. Some were warnings, others were names. Lena translated softly, her voice echoing off the stone. This place was built for the final ones, those who remember, those who keep truth alive. Ward stepped forward and asked her what truth the Drax were trying to erase. Lena placed a hand on the spire and said, "The truth that we are not alone. That our worlds were once one. That peace once lived among stars." The chamber began to shift. The floor lowered, revealing a hidden staircase beneath the map. They followed it downward into another room filled with strange devices. Crystal panels, coiled wires, floating screens. It was Eldari technology untouched by war. A time capsule waiting to be used. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "This is what they feared," she said. "Not our weapons. Our memory." Ward touched one of the floating screens. It showed a starfield, blinking points connected by silver lines. He recognized Earth among them. And next to it, a smaller star with the Eldari homeworld marked in gold. Lines stretched between them, forming paths long lost. It was a map of unity. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the silence. One of Miller's scouts had tripped a sensor. A red light pulsed near the entrance. Lena's chant stopped. Ward raised his weapon. They weren't alone. Heavy footsteps echoed above. The Drax had followed them. Somehow they had tracked the group's movements. Panic spread through the chamber, but Lena raised both hands and said, "No more running." Ward stood beside her. Miller and the other humans formed a line. Eldari warriors joined them. For the first time, they stood not as two broken races, but as one force with a purpose. This was the place they would protect. The first Drax soldier entered, its armor black and sharp like bone. It moved without sound. More followed. Dozens. They filled the upper chamber. But they didn't descend right away. They paused, staring at the glowing map. Their hesitation revealed something important. They feared this room. Ward realized the truth. The Dracs were not just killers. They were cleaners, erasers. They had been ordered to destroy memory. Sanctum held proof of everything they wanted to hide. It was the one thing more dangerous than a weapon. History. Lena stepped forward, her voice rising again. This time it was not soft. It was strong and clear. The symbols on the walls flared with light. The chamber shook. The Dracs moved in, but their steps were slow, almost uncertain. They felt it too. This place was protected. A pulse of energy spread through the floor. Ward braced himself. The light from the walls flowed into the spire. The floating screens rose higher, forming a dome of memory above them. Images appeared. Eldari cities. Human colonies, peaceful meetings in space. The forgotten truth made visible again. One Drax raised a weapon, but it cracked and fell apart in his hands. The chamber rejected violence. It responded only to unity. Ward understood. We don't fight here, he said. We remember. Lena reached out and took his hand. Her other hand rested on the spire. She whispered something in her language, and the spire sent out one final pulse. The Dracs backed away, confused, disoriented. Then one by one, they turned and left, not in defeat. In silence, the chamber sealed itself once more. The light dimmed, the air grew still. Everyone remained quiet. Then Lena turned to the group and sighed. Sanctum has spoken. Now we lead others here. And the map was ready to grow again. Asterisk, after the Dracs left, silence filled Sanctum once again. The chamber's light dimmed to a soft glow. Everyone stood still, unsure if it was over. Ward lowered his weapon slowly. Lena knelt beside the spire, her fingers tracing the edge of the stone. She didn't cry. She breathed deeply, like someone remembering how to feel peace again. The Eldari children approached and sat around her. Some touched the tiles. Others stared at the walls. They had never seen their past like this before. Lena looked up at Ward and said, "They will remember. This place will teach them." Ward looked around. The images had faded, but he could still feel the power in the room. Sanctum was more than a shelter. It was a seed. A place meant to grow something new. He walked over to the far wall and touched a cold metal panel. It slid open, revealing shelves filled with sealed crystal scrolls. He pulled one out carefully and handed it to Lena. She held it with both hands, then placed it against her chest. "These are our songs, our truth, our warning outside the gate." The wind had changed. It was colder, sharper. Miller stood guard near the entrance with 2 Eldari fighters. No Dracs had returned, but they all knew this peace wouldn't last long. The Dracs might have retreated, but they would come again. Ward gathered the humans and Eldari leaders into a circle. He unrolled the old dirt map and placed it on the ground. Lena added new mark symbols for Sanctum and safe paths leading outward. One by one, others contributed. They built the next part of the journey together. "We can't stay here," Ward said. "This is sacred ground. But there are others out there who still don't know the truth. We have to reach them before the Dracs do." Lena nodded. "There are more sanctums, hidden places. If we connect them, we can awaken the rest of the knowledge." They decided to split into 3 groups. Each would take a piece of the new map and head toward a different direction. Ward would lead the northern path. Lena would take the eastern mountains. Miller volunteered for the western edge where human strongholds still resisted. Before leaving, each group spent one last night inside Sanctum. They lit soft fires, they sang, they shared stories. Human children played beside Eldari children, no barriers, no walls. Just one group trying to hold on to hope. At dawn, Ward walked to Lena as she prepared her group. She wore a deep brown cloak now, stitched with golden threads shaped like spirals. Around her neck hung one of the crystal scrolls. "Will you be Safe? He asked. I will carry memory, she answered. And memory protects. Ward placed his hand over hers and said, We'll find each other again. When the paths connect, then they separated. Each step away from Sanctum felt heavier than the last. But they walked with purpose. The map was no longer just a guide. It was a promise. A living memory shared by those who chose unity. Ward's path led through broken fields and twisted highways. He passed rusted vehicles and scorched forests. Sometimes they found old bunkers. Sometimes they met frightened survivors. To each one, Ward showed the spiral. Some laughed. Some cried. Some followed. They came to a ruined research base deep in the north. It had been abandoned, but power still flowed in the lower levels. Ward and his group entered carefully. Inside, they found machines blinking with old Earth tech mixed with something else. Symbols glowed faintly on the walls. Not human. Eldari, one of the scientists who had stayed behind, explained what happened. We studied what the Eldari left behind, tried to decode it. But the data was too complex. Then one day, the Drax arrived. They didn't destroy the base. They took the core and left. Ward realized the truth. The Drax weren't just erasing memory. They were stealing it. They wanted to control the past so they could shape the future, in the deepest part of the lab. Lena's symbol appeared again. A spiral carved into a control panel. Ward placed his hand on it. The console flickered. Then a map appeared. Not just of Earth, of multiple worlds, all connected. All once touched by the Eldari. This was part of the larger truth. Sanctum was only one node. There were others, hundreds, maybe thousands. If they could find and link them, they could rebuild something greater than a world. A memory strong enough to stop the Drax forever. Ward copied the data onto a secure drive. Then he carved the spiral outside the base with his knife. A signal. To Lena, to anyone searching. He stood in the snow and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, she was walking another path, and their map was still growing. The wind howled across the mountain ridge as Lena's group climbed toward the eastern peaks. Snow covered the path, but her feet moved with steady purpose. Behind her, Eldari warriors helped human refugees cross the frozen rocks. Each step forward felt heavier, but none of them stopped. In Lena's hand was a second map, drawn not on paper but carved into crystal. It glowed softly in the cold air. The lines shifted slightly, showing paths hidden under ice and rock. These paths were ancient, older than human memory. Only her people had known they were still there. They camped inside a narrow cave that night. Fires were small, and voices were few. One human soldier coughed hard, his breath steaming in the dark. An Eldari healer moved to help him, wrapping his chest with warm cloth soaked in herbal oil. The man didn't flinch. He just said, "Thanks." That small word echoed louder than any shout. It meant trust, real trust. And it meant they were no longer just traveling together. They were surviving as one. Lena sat beside the fire, her eyes locked on the cave wall. She drew in the ash with a stick. Another spiral. Another reminder. She didn't speak, but those watching understood. The spiral meant direction. It meant memory. It meant they were still on the right path. The next day brought storms, blinding snow, howling winds. One of the children was nearly swept away before. Lena grabbed her arm and pulled her close. The girl clung to her, shaking but silent. Lena wrapped her in her cloak and carried her for the rest of the climb. Finally, they reached the summit. A frozen plateau stretched out before them. At its center stood a tall pillar made of smooth black stone. No snow touched it. No wind moved around it. Lena walked forward and placed her hand on its surface. The pillar pulsed once, then again. A sound vibrated through the ice, deep and old. The snow around the base melted away, revealing another spiral carved into the stone. Lena dropped to her knees. "We have found the next sanctum," she said. They set camp around the pillar. Fires were lit, tents raised. The air was calmer, now as if the mountain itself recognized them. That night, Lena sang again, not a song of loss, but a song of arrival. One by one, others joined her voice. Meanwhile, on the western front, Miller's group faced fire instead of snow. The lands were dry, cracked, and blackened by war. Drax patrols moved like smoke through ruined cities. Miller led his people through shadows, hiding in the bones of buildings long abandoned. He carried a piece of the dirt map folded inside his vest. Every night he checked it. Every morning he added marks, hidden supply caches, safe rooftops, loyal outposts. His spiral symbol was carved into every wall they passed. A signal that someone still believed. One evening, his team found a broadcast tower still standing. Its control room was half buried in rubble, but the main screen flickered with weak power. One of the Eldari engineers reconnected the wires using tools crafted from salvaged parts. The screen blinked. Then a message played. It was Lena's voice, recorded weeks ago. If you hear this, you are not alone. You carry memory. You carry truth. Follow the spiral. It will lead you to sanctum. Miller stared at the screen, jaw tight. Then he looked at his team and said, "We keep going." Back in the north, Ward stood at the edge of a ruined bridge, watching the sunrise. More survivors had joined his group. Farmers, medics, orphans. A few had brought old maps, stained and torn, but useful. They sat around fires at night, drawing new paths into the dirt. Ward had started as a soldier. Now he was something else. A guide, a messenger. He no longer carried orders. He carried memory. He carried the spiral. That morning, a boy approached and handed him a smooth stone. On it, carved with shaking hands, was the spiral symbol. "My sister made this," the boy said. "She said you'd know what to do with it." Ward took the stone and placed it on the ground beside their growing map. He nodded once. "We keep moving. Always forward." Somewhere under the mountain, Lena lit the second sanctum's core. The black pillar opened, revealing more scrolls, more maps, more memory. She knelt and whispered to the stone. Now the world remembers. The map had grown far beyond dirt. It was now carved in stone, burned into cloth, recorded in voices, and held in the hearts of those who refused to forget. And the light of memory moved farther than ever before. Asterisk, the stars above were clear that night, brighter than Ward had seen in months. He stood on a ridge with a pair of binoculars, scanning the horizon. Below him, the camp buzzed quietly. Fires glowed. Children whispered. Eldari and humans shared food and tools. It was a city made from nothing but hope. Ward lowered the binoculars. He saw movement in the distance. Not Drax, runners, messengers. 2 Eldari scouts and 1 human girl, all carrying satchels marked with the spiral. He rushed down the slope as they reached the camp entrance. "We found her," said the lead scout. "Lena has lit the second sanctum." The eastern flame burns bright. Cheers broke out. People clapped, hugged, and raised their hands. The message meant more than good news. It meant connection. It meant the plan was working. The spiral path was forming across the land. Ward gathered the leaders that night. They sat around the main fire, map unrolled across flat stone. New symbols were added. Safe zones, sanctum markers, relay points. Messages etched into stone walls and scratched into metal doors. The memory was spreading like fire through dry grass. "We keep moving north," Ward said. "There's a third site near the glaciers, a ruined observatory. The old data says the Eldari visited it long ago." An Eldari engineer nodded. "It was a star listener tower. My grandmother once spoke of it." The floor glowed with light. The sky spoke through mirrors. Ward smiled slightly. "Then we wake it up again." They marched the next morning. Snow fell thick, but their boots held steady. Ward moved at the front, flanked by scouts. Each carried the spiral symbol on their chest or sleeve. It wasn't just a guide. It had become their flag. After 4 days, they reached the observatory. It sat half buried under snow and ice, but its tower still pointed to the sky. Cracks ran through the walls. Metal doors hung loose. But inside, the main dome remained whole. The roof opened slowly, grinding against time. Inside the main chamber, a glass floor covered a circular platform. Beneath it, faint lights flickered. The scouts placed lanterns at each point. Then the Eldari engineer stepped forward and placed a crystal from the second sanctum into a narrow socket. The floor glowed. Soft lines traced ancient patterns across the dome. Stars formed in the air, floating like ghosts. The spiral appeared at the center, spinning slowly. Then words scrolled across the wall in both Eldari script and human language. Memory must be carried. Memory must be shared. Memory must be protected. Ward read the message twice. Then he turned to his people. This place is not just a memory, it's a signal. A tower that speaks truth into the sky. They spent 2 days restoring. The systems, solar panels were raised. Signal transmitters repaired. Scrolls placed in glass cases. A broadcast was prepared. On the 3rd night, the tower spoke. A soft pulse shot into the stars, silent but strong. A beacon. Lena heard it in her dreams. She woke in the eastern camp and walked outside, staring. At the sky, the stars above blinked in rhythm. A smile crossed her face. The northern light has returned, she said. Messages spread fast now. Runners carried updates from village to village. Sanctum sites were being found. The spiral symbol showed up on walls in cities thought lost. People were beginning to follow the path even without seeing Ward or Lena. The map had become alive. In the west, Miller's team had reached a hidden base beneath the canyon floor. Eldari ruins mixed with human tech. A sanctum core waited inside. The spiral carved into its door responded to Miller's voice. The core opened. Another fire lit. Another truth awakened. With each sanctum opened, the Dracs grew more violent. Their patrols increased. Their attacks became more focused. They no longer burned blindly. They hunted maps. They targeted the spiral. Ward's group faced an ambush 2 days after lighting the tower. The Dracs descended from the cliffs in silence. Shadows moved fast, too fast. They cut off the rear scouts. Screams broke the night. Ward ordered a retreat. But not all made it back. They lost 7 people, 3 humans, 4 Eldari. Each one had carried memory. Each one had shared the spiral. Ward knelt over the fresh graves the next morning and drew the symbol beside each mound. They walked the path still, he whispered. Lena received the report by relay drone. Her face tightened, but her hands stayed steady. We continue, she said. Always forward. The losses hurt. But the light spread faster. Sanctum sites across continents now pulsed in rhythm. Maps stitched together from dust, from stone, from memory. And each piece whispered the same truth. The spiral leads to salvation. The sky above Lena's camp shimmered with the glow of sanctum fire. Blue lights pulsed from the black pillar they had awakened, and the ground hummed with soft energy. Survivors gathered near it every night, resting in its warmth. For the first time in years, peace seemed possible. Lena stood at the edge of the circle, holding one of the ancient crystal scrolls. Its surface flickered with images from the past. Cities in the clouds. Eldari ships sailing between stars. Humans and Eldari, standing side by side in council halls. A memory not imagined, but real. She turned to the group around her. We are the ones who remember, she said. And we are the ones who rebuild. Far to the north, Ward's group had reached the edge of the glacier fields. The cold bit deep, but they pushed forward. Each mile revealed new sign spirals carved into stone, messages etched into metal. Sanctum sites had once covered the entire planet. The Drax had missed some. Others had been hidden too well to find. They stopped in a valley where the snow was melted in a perfect circle. In the center stood a tall metal spire covered in moss. Ward approached it and placed his hand against the surface. It vibrated gently. A soft chime echoed through the air. The ground split open beneath the spire. A staircase descended into the earth. Ward signaled his team to follow. Torches in hand, they moved carefully down the steps. At the bottom, they found a chamber unlike any before. The walls were crystal. The floor was glass. The ceiling showed stars. This was not just another sanctum. It was older, deeper, a place of beginning. At the center of the room stood a table, made of white stone. On it lay 3 spirals, glowing faintly. Ward stepped closer. The spirals rose into the air and hovered. Then they spun together, merging into one single symbol. A new form, a unity. He reached for it. The moment his fingers touched the light, images flooded his mind. Not just memories, visions, a future. Eldari cities rebuilt with human hands. Human schools filled with Eldari children. A great circle formed in the desert, where all came to speak and share. The vision faded. Ward dropped to one knee, breath sharp. His team ran to him, but he waved them back. "I saw what comes next," he said. "But only if we finish the path." The spiral in the chamber pulsed once more and then faded. The stone table opened, revealing a small metal box. Ward lifted it carefully. Inside was a seed. Not of a tree, but of memory. A data core encoded with the oldest Eldari knowledge. It could guide rebuilding. It could restore everything. They left the chamber in silence. The spire closed behind them. Ward carved the spiral into the ground above. He didn't speak as they made camp. He simply stared into the fire, holding the seed. In the west, Miller's team faced another assault. The Drax had found one of the relay posts and burned it to the ground. Smoke filled the canyon. Bodies lay still. Miller knelt beside a young girl, her spiral pendant crushed in her hand. He stood slowly and faced his team. "We carry them now," he said. "Every name, every story. We carry them all." They began carving names into the canyon wall. One by one, no grave, no stone, just names etched in memory. When they were done, Miller marked the spot with the spiral. Then they moved on. Back at Lena's camp, a signal arrived. A message from the north. Ward's voice. Clear and strong. "We found the core sanctum. The map is complete. We carry the seed. The path ends in the Valley of Suns." Lena felt the words enter her chest like a heartbeat. She turned to the pillar and placed her hand against it. "We are ready," she said. They began their final march. From the east, from the north, from the west, the 3 groups converged. Survivors from every background, soldiers, farmers, children, scholars, some limped. Some carried the wounded. All carried the spiral. They met in a dry valley where once stood a great Eldari hall. Its walls had crumbled, but the foundation still held firm. At the center of the ruin, 3 symbols were carved into the stone. The same spiral. The same memory. Ward stepped forward and placed the seed into a carved bowl. Lena stood beside him. Miller followed, placing one of the stone name tablets in front of the bowl. Together, they lit a fire. The ground trembled. The fire changed color. Blue, then white, then gold. A light shot into the sky. All over the world, sanctum sites responded. Towers glowed. Scrolls activated. Maps completed themselves. The spiral was whole again. Asterisk, the golden light rose high into the sky, brighter than any star. It shimmered over mountains, forests, oceans, and deserts. People stopped to watch. In ruins and cities, in caves and towers, they looked up. No words were spoken. Only silence and awe remained. At the valley center, Ward stepped back from the bowl where the seed now burned like a sun. The symbol of the spiral spun slowly above it, glowing in midair. It cast soft light across everyone's faces. Eldari. And humans stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes wide, hearts full. Lena raised her hand and spoke clearly. This is not the end. This is the first day of memory made whole. A ripple of energy moved across the valley floor. The broken foundation of the ancient Eldari Hall began to respond. Cracks sealed, stones lifted. Light flowed like water through the ground. The ruin was rebuilding itself not by tools, but by memory encoded in the seed. Miller stepped forward and placed the tablet of names beside the new structure. They are part of it now, he said. All who walked the path. All who carried truth. Children came forward next, holding smaller spirals carved from wood and bone. They placed them around the fire, forming a perfect circle. One child turned and asked Lena, "Will the Drax come again?" She looked at Ward, then at the others. Her voice was calm. "They might, but if they do, they will find us ready. Not just with weapons, but with unity. With memory." From the north, scouts reported a strange silence across the Drax patrol zones. No movements. No signals. Some said the Drax had withdrawn. Others said they were watching. But none approached the valley. The fire kept burning. The spiral kept shining. A new message was prepared. Lena, Ward, and Miller recorded it together. It was broadcast through the reactivated towers. The message was simple and spoken in both languages. Sanctum is open. The path is alive. Come, walk it with us. The response was swift. Across the land, groups began moving toward the valley. Survivors who had once hidden now stepped into the light. Eldari elders who thought they were the last began teaching again. Human leaders who had doubted now offered support. New sanctum stones were placed at the four corners of the valley. Each held scrolls, symbols, and shared history. People came not just to learn, but to leave something behind. Songs, carvings, names, maps, all added to the growing spiral of memory. Ward spent his days helping rebuild the hall. He cut stone, lifted beams, drew new paths on the expanding map. At night he stood at the edge of camp, watching the stars. One evening, Lena joined him. She handed him a new scroll. "It's time you write your part," she said. He unrolled the scroll and stared at the blank surface. For a long time he said nothing. Then he nodded. "Not about me. About us." He began to write. Not with a soldier's hand, but with a guide's heart. The story of the map, the dirt, the walk, the names, the towers, the light, the memory. When he was done, Lena placed the scroll into one of the crystal cases. It locked with a soft chime. "Now it belongs to the future," she said. The next day, the first school opened under the rebuilt dome. Children sat in a wide circle, human and Eldari mixed together. Elders taught them the spiral, the songs, the meaning behind every line on the map. A girl asked, "Why did the war begin?" An old man answered, "Because memory was lost." And fear grew in its place. "And why did it end?" she asked. Lena stepped forward. "Because someone drew a map in the dirt, and others chose to follow it." The fire at the center of the valley still burned. It never faded. It didn't grow wild. It stayed steady. A reminder, a marker, a light to gather around when the world felt dark. Years passed. The valley changed. Buildings rose. Trees were planted. Roads connected distant places. But the spiral at the center never moved. It remained carved into stone, into hearts, into time. And whenever a traveler arrived dusty, lost, afraid, they were greeted not with questions, but with open hands. Someone would hand them a stone. A small one. On it, the spiral, and they would be told, this is the path. And you are part of it now.